Hi, this is John. I'd like to continue our series on farming for profit. And here I am at our little farm near Bankit, which we call Kwamaglobat. We've got some cattle that you can see in the background grazing. And we have some pigs and chickens and a small vegetable patch here and a small orchard. We've only been at this little farm for just under a year now and slowly trying to develop it. We spoke about our vision and the necessity to start thinking about a vision in terms of three components: our financial, our environmental, and our social. And it's important to bear those three components in your mind when you look at profit. So in the second lesson, we looked at how to define that profit and work back from profit to our gross income, our variable costs, and our overheads. And those three things, our income, our variable costs, and our overheads, are together going to define or create the profit that we need from our farm. But our profit must be very much determined in the context of our environment and social objectives. And it's important for you as a farmer to really get to grips with what you want in the environment of your farm, the ecology of your farm, the nature of your farm, and also the social components of your farm. Because as you define your income, your costs, and your overheads, those are going to be very much a part of the way you see your farm. So for example, on your costs like in crop production, can be related to the way you farm. If you're a very industrial kind of farm where you rely heavily on chemicals and fertilizers and so on, your costs are very much related to that. Whereas if you're more prone or more desiring to have a ecologically functioning farm where you are concerned with minimizing external inputs, especially external chemicals, reducing those, then your costs are going to be related to that. When we think about farming, we need to think of our resources that we're using. Are they renewable or are they non-renewable? And if they are renewable, how do we cost that in? So if we're going to be thinking about using more manures, recycling our nutrients on the farm, perhaps bringing in organic materials, that's going to be a very different cost structure to one in which you're relying on inorganic fertilizers and chemicals. And those inorganic fertilizers and chemicals are generally non-renewable or have a cost that is far greater than the dollar value that you use to buy them onto the farm. For example, if you are buying, say, ammonium nitrate, the ammonium nitrate might cost you, I don't know, say $35 a bag, $40 a bag. But the real cost of that is far, far greater and not really reflected in that price. And I'm talking here the polluting effects or the polluting costs of the production of that ammonium nitrate, the cost of the impact of that ammonium nitrate on your soil biology, your soil health, and the impact of that ammonium nitrate on acidifying your soil or releasing nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. Similarly with the chemicals that you might use. If you're more of an industrial farmer, the chemicals that you buy, whether they're herbicides or insecticides or fungicides, they may have a simple dollar cost that you can plug into your equations to create profit. But their costs might be far greater than that dollar value because of the manufacturing costs and the polluting effects of those chemicals into the environment, the impact of those chemicals on the microflora in your soil, the impact of those chemicals on human health. So these costs, while we can nominate them in dollar values, in what it costs to buy them off the shelf and to apply them in our fields, that dollar cost doesn't always reflect the impact that those chemicals are going to have on the environment and on human social context. So when we talk about profit, when we talk about building up our model of cost and income and overheads, we need to think beyond just the dollar value and consider the way we farm in relation to our objectives, our goals, our vision for our farm. Are we a farm which is going to be ecologically sound and take into consideration the social impacts of our farming operations? Or are we just concerned with profit and profit alone? So that's what I would like to say as an introduction to what we're going to go into as we get into the actual calculations, that we keep in mind these three components of the vision that we have for our farm. The financial component, that we should be viable, our ecological or our environmental values and vision for our farm, and the social values and vision that we have for our farm. So let's now turn to looking at some workings to find out how we can actually develop our financial model for our farm. So let's go back to the classroom here, where we want to look at how we can develop this profit model in a very practical and useful way for a farmer. So we'd spoken about having a profit, and we start from the profit that we want to achieve. So let's do an example. Okay, so let's just say we want to make a $5,000 profit. And that is going to represent 20% of our gross income. Therefore, our gross income has to be $25,000. Okay, that's so 20% of $25,000 is going to be $5,000. Now, someone once said that there's a limit to what you can save, but there's no limit to what you can earn. And the meaning here, I think, is if we are imaginative, if we are bold, if we think of what we can achieve on our farm, we can actually achieve a lot. So on this table here, I want us to think about how are we going to earn $25,000 in gross income. So that's what we're going to put here, our gross income. Okay. And each one of these lines is going to be the enterprises that we can have on our farm. Now remember, we said that yield times price gives us our gross income. But that would be for a unit. Okay, so we need on this side, I'm going to put the number of units or the area. So let's say we have 10 hectares of maize, or we have 20 pigs or whatever. So that would be here. So the number multiplied by the yield times by the price will give us our gross income. So in my little introduction, I was showing you my farm, or our farm, and we have a number of small enterprises on that farm. It's a small farm, it's 10 hectares, and so is it possible on that size farm to achieve a gross income of $25,000 to give us a profit of $5,000? So these are going to be our enterprises. Okay, and each enterprise is a unique system on farm where we grow something, market it, and earn an income. So we have a pig project. Okay, We have a number of sows, we produce piglets, and we fatten those up and we sell them. So let's just say that we can get from a fattened piglet 45 kilograms of cold dressed weight when we slaughter that piglet and sell it. And let's say we can sell that at $4 per kilogram. So if we multiply 4 by 45, we get $180. So each piglet is worth $180. Now, if we go and look at the number of sows we've got and the number of litters we have per year and the size of those litters, we can just say, for example, that we can have 100 piglets harvested per year. Okay, so that would be, say, 10 piglets per sow times 2 farrowings a year. So that would be per sow 20 piglets. And if we have 5 sows, that's 100 piglets that we can fatten and sell. So 100 by 45 by 4 gives us $18,000. Okay, so just from the pig enterprise, we're getting close to our 25,000. Now we also do broilers. Now our broiler project is fairly small at this stage, but let's just say for each broiler, so we just say for one broiler, we can get $6. Now, it depends, of course, how you market that, whether you're going to get that price or not. And we do 100 broilers at a time, and we can rotate that through the year, and we can get 8 rotations in a year. So we can get 800 broilers purchased and fattened in 5-6 weeks and sold for $6 each. Okay, so that would give us $4,800. Okay, 800 by 6, 6 8 are $4,800. Then we also do vegetables. We've got a small vegetable patch, and that is 1,200 meters squared. It's very small, but if we can plant that 3 times a year, and on each square meter we can have 4 cabbages, and we can do that 3 times a year in rotation. Okay, we're just going to use cabbages. We could put all the other vegetables in there as well, so we can work that all out. But let's just say we can do 4 cabbages 3 times a year. That would be 12 cabbages per square meter, and let's say we can get 40 cents per cabbage. So let's calculate that out. Okay, 1,200 square meters times 12 cabbage per square meter at 40 cents per cabbage, that's $5,760 income. Now we also have cattle. Cattle is a little bit more complicated to calculate, so I'll just leave that off for the moment, because if you look at this, we're already at the 25,000 mark. So if we add that up, that's 15, so 5 and 5 is 10, 18, we had $28,560 income. So if all this works out, we can achieve a gross income of $28,560, which is a little bit above our gross income. So the point is now, okay, we've got to ensure that we can achieve 45 kg cold dress weight in our pigs. We've got to make sure that all these 800 broilers are sold at $6, and our 1,200 square meters of vegetables is cycled and rotated and produced sufficient produce that we sell for that amount of money. We now have to come back now and figure out how much is it going to cost us to do this. So this is where we're going to put our variable cost. We're just going to call that variable cost so that we can get our total variable cost. Now, earlier in last week's presentation, or in number 2, we said we wanted to have a gross margin of 50%. So if we want a gross margin of 50%, that means that our gross margin has to be $12,500. And so our total variable cost is that minus that is going to be $12,500. So the total variable cost that we're going to put in here has to be $12,500. So how do we work out our costs in order to achieve that. Okay, so let's look at pigs. 50% of this has to be our gross margin. So 50% of this is our total variable cost. So we can't, in this example, we can't go beyond $9,000 for our variable cost, which would be $90 per pig. And that has got to be for the whole enterprise. Okay, so when we look at all the costs that we are spending on the sows, the boar, and the piglets, that total cost must not exceed $9,000. For our broilers, we're going to look at half of that, so $2,400, and divided by 800, that's $3 per broiler. So we can't spend more than $3 per broiler to achieve a broiler big enough to sell for $6. And on our vegetables, 50% of that is $2,880, and divide that by 1,200 square meters is $2.40 per square meter. So if we have 3 cycles, we shouldn't spend more than 80 cents per square meter in order to produce these vegetables. Okay, so now that gives us the parameters within which we can work out our budget for these 3 enterprises. And if this all works out, if we can produce piglets, fattened piglets at $90 each, and broilers at $3 each, and vegetables at $2.40 per square meter, and we can sell according to these calculations here, we can achieve our gross margin of $12,500. Now, how much does that leave for overheads? Okay, overheads. So our overheads are $25,000 minus $12,500, which gives us a gross margin of $12,500, less our profit of $5,000, which means that our overheads must not exceed $7,500 for the year. So if we can do that, if we can now budget our overheads within that amount of money, we can achieve this profit of $5,000. As I said, the easiest way to make profit is on paper. And you can see how easy that was. Okay? The thing now is to really dig down and say, okay, are these prices realistic? Are these yields realistic for the variable cost that we're going to spend? And how do we divide up this $90 for piglets? How much is on food? How much is on labor? How much is on electricity, transport, etc.? Same with broilers. How much are we going to spend on food, the day-old chicks, etc.? And on the vegetables, what are we going to spend that money on? And we might find that actually this is too little or too much. And if it's not enough and it works out that our piglets are going to cost us $110, $120 each, that's going to increase our total variable cost and it's going to reduce our gross margin. Likewise, our broilers, if we end up spending more than $3, but we still sell at $6, our gross margin is going to decline. So this, you can see, gives us the parameters within which we are going to work. But it does appear, just on paper, that we can make a profit of $5,000 off a small farm of 100 piglets per year, 800 broilers, and 1,200 square meters of vegetables. So here we have the spreadsheet which shows you the sequence of how we follow our profit model. So here we have our profit. We specify that as $5,000 at 20%. That then automatically calculates the $25,000 that we need of gross income. Then we specify here the 50% of gross margin, and then that automatically calculates these 3 components. Our overheads of $7,500, our total variable costs of $12,500, and our gross margin of 12,500. Then you specify the area or number of items in each enterprise, the variable cost per unit, the yield that you would expect, and the price, and then all these things are calculated. Now, I've put in here the numbers that I showed you. 45 kg cold dress mass at a price of $4 per kilogram. One broiler costing $6. 8 vegetables, I used 8 at this time at 40 cents. And one animal of cattle at an income of $83 per unit. Now, that might seem a bit low, but I'll have to explain that later in another lesson. And then I've put in some numbers here, which are a little bit different from what I put on the paper, and the variable cost per unit. And these numbers I got from a budget which I did. So it shows you here that our variable costs are $19,576, which is more than our total variable cost that's allowed in this model. Our total income is more than what we originally budgeted, which is a good thing. But our total gross margin is now only 9,000 instead of the 12,500. So that gives us a percentage of 32%. Now, if you notice that this $9,051 gross margin, if we subtract our overheads from that, we're going to end up with a gross profit that is not $5,000. So this is what it tells us here at this little bottom here. If our overheads remain at 7,500, okay, then our gross profit is only going to be 1,551. And that is calculated from this figure, 9,000 minus 7,500, which is about 1,500. And that's only a profit of 5.4%. So unless we can save money on our overheads, we are not going to hit that profit of 5,000 in this scenario. If we are going to aim and hold fast to this objective of a $5,000 profit, gross profit, then the maximum money that we can spend on overheads is $4,000, $4,051, based on this gross margin. Okay, so if we get this gross margin of 9,000 and we subtract $5,000 profit, we get the 4,051, and that's the maximum we can spend. So that gives you the kind of parameters within which you can then work out your overheads, okay, in order to get this profit of $5,000. Or if you can't contain your overheads, your profit is going to go down. This little graph here is just what we budgeted, okay, and this is what's the actual scenario from here. So you can see our variable costs have gone up significantly. They've gone from 12,500 to nearly 20,000. And therefore our overheads are shrunk in order to get that $5,000 profit. What this little spreadsheet also shows you is your break-even price. So what this tells us is, in this scenario on the pigs, we must sell our pigs for at least $3.38 per kilogram. Otherwise, we're going to make a loss on that pig enterprise. Similarly, on the broilers, we have to sell each broiler for at least $5.58. Otherwise, we'll make a loss on this. And similarly on vegetables, for each unit of vegetable that we sell, it should be 23 cents minimum. And then this is the break-even yield. So we need at least 38 kilograms cold dress mass at that price of $4 in order to make this pig enterprise viable. Similarly, on broilers, we can allow for 10% loss. In other words, we are if we don't sell all 720, we can sell 90% of that and still break even. And similarly on the vegetables, we need to sell. It's a bit tricky to try and understand this, but we need to sell at least 4.5 units per year from each square meter if we're going to break even. Don't worry about the cattle at this stage. I'll explain that later in another lesson. And then just quickly to show you, we have these different models that you can use. For broilers, do 100 broilers per cycle length of 42 days. That means we can do 8 cycles a year. That gives us 800 birds. If we have mortality of 3%, $6 a bird, that's our total income. This is how much feed they require with some wastage. This is our feed bill. How much feed do we need and how much will that cost? And then the cost of day-olds, vets and meds, labor, electricity, transport, giving us a cost of $4.62 a bird and a gross margin of $1.20 per bird in this scenario. And here we do the pigs. We specify the number of sows, the number of gilts, and how much feed they require per day, the number of boars that we've got, the litter size, the cycles per year, the length of time of fattening, and how much feed will they eat per day on average, mortality rate, and the feed wastage rate. What are we going to feed them? The cost of that feed, and then other components like vets and meds, labor, transport, and so on. So this is a way to build up your budget so that you know exactly how much it's going to cost you per piglet. This is the total cost, okay, including the sows, the gilts, the boars, and so on, and the gross margin that you would expect. So these numbers then you plug in to this model here, and you can then determine whether you're going to make a profit or not. So like I said, these are available. I'm quite happy to send them out to you and explain their use if you do need them. So there we have our lesson for today. I think you understand now the importance of starting with profit and working backwards to our gross income and our total variable costs and the overheads, and how you can then budget those in a very structured and an organized way so that you can achieve the profit that you want to achieve on your farm. Remember, farming is not a simple thing. It takes time, it takes a lot of organization, it takes a lot of management. And it's good to have these parameters down on paper and then work from that into the field and onto the pastures and into the piggery and so on. And keep those costs very much in control and manage the costs in relation to your environment and in relation to your social context. So thanks for watching, and like I said before, you're free to contact me and ask me further information, or if you want access to those spreadsheets, I'll be quite happy to send them to you. So thanks again. Happy farming. Ciao for now.